Welcome to the Manifestation and Money podcast, where we bridge the worlds of the taboo topic of money with the woo-woo world of manifestation. We're your hosts, Chris and Jenny Schultz.
We're not just about dollars and cents around here. We're all about lifestyle design. You can be working towards financial independence while still living a life you love today.
Get ready for insightful conversations with guests who have embraced the FIRE movement by achieving financial independence and retiring early, as well as entrepreneurs and individuals who defied the norm and have paved their own way to a life they love.
Together, we'll explore the powerful connection between mindset, financial freedom, and living a purposeful life. And of course, we'll be sharing our own journey to how we carved our path to a seven-figure net worth before hitting the big 4-0. Are you ready to ignite your financial future? Then let's dive right in.
Welcome to the Manifestation and Money podcast, where your journey to financial independence and the life you love begins now.
Dan Woodruff knows firsthand what it's like to be stuck under fluorescent lights at a cubicle. His life shifted once he found the courage to say no thank you. And the more he said no thank you, the more independence he has gained. So listen in today to Dan's story, as I know we could all use a good old dose of inspiration to authentically step into a life we love. Welcome to the Manifestation and Money podcast, Dan.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. So can you share with the listeners a little bit about who you are and what your story is?
It all starts, really, the current version of Dan really starts about 3 years ago. And let's back up even more. So I spent 20 years in corporate and like 20 years in a cubicle or an office, and really enjoyed the work. I was in the creative field and then marketing, and also so I ran and built creative teams and really enjoyed the work until I didn't. And very specifically, there was my last corporate gig. I remember it very clearly one night. It was about like 8:30 p.m. Another day had gone where I didn't see the sunshine. And I really looked at the project I was working on and probably saw it clearly for the first time. And it sunk in, and it was like, oh, buddy, you're in the wrong place, having that moment. And so it kicked off a couple of years of really just diving in and trying to figure out, what do I want? Who do I want to be in the back half of my life? I'm middle-aged and really asking questions like, what kind of impact can I make? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? The easy questions that we all kick around every morning before breakfast. So asking myself those questions and diving deep and challenging my assumptions of what I truly want. Then from that, just building the life that I want to live and explore and really kind of grow into, really, I guess is the best way to put it. And then ultimately, like, what do I do for a living now is like the easy LinkedIn answer is I'm an executive coach, but I help people have or navigate that same feeling that I had. And that moment when, well, typically the clients I work with, they've all had that moment or a version of it, of just like, I'm in the wrong place. Mm-hmm. Oof, now what? How do I get it? How do I get into the right place? So I work with them and get them in the right place.
That is so important. So are you primarily dealing with people who then are in the job world and are going, I can't do this anymore. I'm suffocated or stifled by necessarily like their income that they're making, their current job situation, and helping them pivot out into doing their own thing from that point?
My mission is to help successful people achieve more. And it's not my job to judge what more is. It's their job, right? So it might be more money. It might be more houses. It might be a Rolex on each arm, whatever the case may be. Or it might be more time to think, right? Maybe it's more nights that they can sleep all the way through, or more Sunday afternoons that they don't have filled with anxiety to go to work, whatever that more is. But ultimately, the hardest question I can ever ask anybody, any adult, is, what do you want?
Yes. Ask that question over and allow yourself to change your answers over time. It's one of my favorites.
once you start asking that, and you can, when you ask yourself, in my opinion, you end up cheating a lot, and you go like, well, I want this. This is it, right? And you don't really dig deep enough. And I fully believe that's why you need a coach or an accountability partner, or just even somebody that's going to call you on the little fibs we tell ourselves and step in and fill that void, right? And holding you accountable. Like, that's why it's so important to have that partner.
Yeah. When you were just saying that, I flashed back to, I was probably in my late 20s, and it was before I had kids. I was in a program and I took the class because I can't remember what it was called, but the gist of it was to essentially level up, have more. And for me at that point, I think I was telling myself those little fibs. I had gone out, I had bought my dream car. I had this sexy Audi TT sports car. It was amazing. I had all the material things that I wanted. And for some reason, that's what I kept grasping for. But I just felt like I just wanted more. And until I actually worked with a coach to figure out that my more wasn't more of material things. My more was experiences and connections and impact. And it's weird, like you said, you tell yourself those fibs. I just kept, like, not consciously, I just kept going for what I thought the next thing was, but I wasn't fulfilled in doing that. So you being a coach, how are you helping guide people through that? Or does it look different for everybody?
I do have a framework, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. The framework is extremely flexible because every single conversation is different, and what my clients are bringing to the conversation, they all have different needs, and I don't have that answer for them, nor should I even attempt to give them an answer. They know the answers. I just hold the space open long enough for them to talk through that and discover what they already know. It's so fun and rewarding and fascinating to watch it happen and just be there to guide them, walk alongside them, and not judge a single thing, because who am I to judge what they want? But it's ultimately just walking alongside of them and make sure they stay on the path.
Mm-hmm. And what caused you to pivot into that? So you went through, you were in your corporate, you decided this wasn't for me. Did you have a coach pull you through, or did you have a messy middle where you were fumbling through it all? Or
it definitely both. So yes, I fumbled through it at many different layers and different paths and some starts and stops. Ultimately, I did have a coach that helped me think through, talk through a lot of it, hold me accountable. And I noticed I was being asked to fill that role by my clients because I was doing some consulting around culture within organizations. And I noticed the leadership team that were primarily my clients were also asking for coaching. Maybe they weren't using the words, right? Or they just said, hey, can I pick your brain about something? And then I quickly realized, like, oh man, they're asking me to coach and I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it the right way. Am I doing this right, wrong, whatever? So I spent the time, I invested. I've gotten credentialed through the International Coaching Federation. It's really about then making that process your own and then finding your people and letting them find you is also part of it.
Yeah, I know with the coaches that I've worked with, I have reached out to them. I've probably watched them for a while or got little tastes of little programs they've offered or whatnot, and then I choose them. You have to find the person that resonates with you, that you can trust, that has that rapport. And I think people just know you want it to be win-win, right? Mm-hmm. You want to love working with your clients as much as they love working with you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you can bring your A game. I have your bio in front of me here, and something just popped out at me that I just had to read it to you and get your insight. You had wrote, just as an article needs to be edited to make sense and tell a complete story, I realized that editing my own story was the key to seeing independence. And I just read that sentence and I'm like, wow, there is a lot in there. So can you please just share a little bit about what it looks like to edit your own story?
Leaning on my design background, it was always like, how much more can I take away? How can I strip it down to the most basic piece of information that does the job? And complexity layered on top of complexity really just becomes nonsense. And especially those stories we tell ourselves and the stories we tell about ourselves. And the more complex it is, the less the more you're actually missing the point. And so if I can whittle it down to 3 words, what do you do? Or what do you believe in? Or what do you care about? Or what do you want? Right? Just narrowing it down to the core, to me, that helps me stay focused. And you keep editing and editing and editing until you can get to the simplest version of yourself or your goals or whatever it is. And then the complexity starts to melt away.
I like that visual, especially in this world that we're in, that there's always so much stuff going on, so much white noise, so much added things, that just to get something down to the essence.
It's simple, not easy. And that's, I think it's frustrating, but so rewarding on the back end, is when you embrace the work. And it's with anything, right? It's, well, you want financial freedom, or you want something new, or to lose weight, or to change something about yourself. Ultimately, you got to do the work. Everybody has ideas. Ideas are the easy part. It's the execution that's where everything falls apart, and the consistency. So if you can make it as simple and just straight to the point as possible, there's less variation, less chasing butterflies along the way.
I love to chase butterflies. Chris is the founder one around here, and I'm like, ooh, here's a good idea. Here's a good idea. That makes sense. It's simpler to connect the dots. If you can see from point A to B, here's where we're going. And then from B to C, here's where we're going. So is that something that you help people kind of peel back the layers to get down to what that simple next thing is, or the simple core value that they want? Or
yeah, you really hit the nail on the head. It's about simplifying it and getting it down to its core. And then we start talking about that. Once they know what they want, let's start to tell a story about it. Let's start to really build emotion around it. Because if it's just a Post-it note on your whiteboard and it's a goal, then it's kind of naked. It doesn't have any emotional tie to it. What's going to get you out of bed in the morning? What's going to get you excited? What's going to get you mad? What's going to get that emotion boiling, or excitement over boiling, right? Or over bubbling, or whatever. What's going to get you into action? And another point I want to make that I think is critical is when you're making these shifts or these decisions, one thing I always challenge on is to make sure that we are running towards something and not away from something. And just that distinction alone is going to really determine how passionate you are about it. Yeah.
I threw myself a retirement party when I turned 34, and I vowed I would never go work for someone else ever again. And I left my job that day, went home the day I actually quit, and I cried. It was just such a weird feeling of like, okay, I did this thing. Here's what I'm going to do. And I still to this day don't understand why I cried. And it didn't last for very long. It was only a minute or two, but I think it was just almost like a relief and this weird sense of I left something that was so predictable. You show up for work every day, you do your job, you go home, you don't get to see the sunlight that day, like you said. It's just such a, like, we're creatures of habit, I find. So all of a sudden to have that taken away, there was a moment of, now what? And then it started filling up with all of these new emotions that I fully embrace today. But in hindsight now, thinking back, if I would have had a coach walking me through that, and just to help me unpack that and be there for the journey with me of, okay, I am done with my job. What is next for me? And have someone like you by my side going, okay, let's see what that looks like. Let's figure out, what do you really want? If you're leaving this, where do you want to go? And just having that support, like I had my family and stuff, but to have support of somebody who had the tools and the resources to help me carve that path forward. I think back to that specific moment, I think that would have been really powerful.
Jenny, you bring up such a powerful, powerful point, and that is understanding that once you've embraced this new path that you're going to go on, that change is difficult. Change is hard. And you don't realize how much of your identity is wrapped up in certain areas. And that identity can become a prison very quickly, or it can become an anchor, or it can really just box you in and hold you where you are because it's uncomfortable to break out of that identity and to carve a new identity on top of that. And that is something I continuously stress in the conversations I have is make sure you're ready for the change. Make sure you have that support staff in place. Who are your cheerleaders? Who are your advocates? Who are the people that are just going to tell you exactly what you need to hear, even though it's going to sting? Do you have those people around you? Because if you don't, it's going to be very difficult. You're going to want to quit and you're going to want to run back to where you were before.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I would have. I know I would have. And I think in this day and age, if you don't have those people in your immediate physical world around you, we have resources at our fingertips to reach out and find those communities and find those peers of people doing the thing we want to do, or who are already doing that thing or in the same boat as us. I think we have more resources in this day and age than people did decades ago.
Yep, I would completely agree. Almost to a fault, because there's paralysis, and you can easily scroll down your LinkedIn or Facebook feed and get advice, contradictory advice, 3 panels down from itself. Like there's an onslaught of that information. So I agree with you to a certain point, and you just have to say, I am hitching my wagon to this mentor, not all 15 of these mentors, or this advice. I'm following just this advice. And for the next 6 months, I fall into that trap all the time. It's like, ooh, a new book. Ooh, a podcast. Oh, YouTube videos. And it's like, this guy's got a program. Oh, she's got a program. And which framework should I choose? Should I Frankenstein them all together? And then nothing gets done.
Yeah, that is a very valid point. You could literally sit in the comfort of your own home thinking that you're doing all these things, scrolling through, making the decisions, getting up the next day, doing it all over, but never actually doing something just because you're almost living in this little virtual. So that's a very valid point there.
Redoing the landscaping around the house this week. And oh man, like muscles hurt that I didn't even know I had as I'm doing it. But at the end of the afternoon, I can look out there and it's like, I did something, right? I accomplished something. Well, we trick ourselves when we post on social media or we read a book or, watch 1,500 YouTube videos. I did something today. I did the work. And that's kind of, again, we can fib to ourselves and pat ourselves on the back for not a lot of progress.
Right. Yeah. And progress you can measure. Huh?
Yes.
So what is the biggest piece of advice that you have for someone trying to create a lifestyle that they love?
It's really about figuring out what you want. And I'll just keep going back to it. What do you really, really want? And once you've got an idea, ask yourself that question 5 more times and continue to dig, and then continue to explore and get ridiculous with it, right? Back to my days when I was a creative director, I would always tell my art directors or my designers, take it all the way out, explore it all the way till it breaks, because we can always come back. But if you didn't take it all the way out to explore it to that point where it just got absurd or silly or it just didn't work, you'll never know. And you'll still have that itch that you need to scratch. So as you're digging in and trying to figure out what you want, take it all the way out. Just say, hey, I want to fly to Mars in my Mazda Miata, whatever it is, right? Like get creative with it, push it all the way out. Even if it will never happen, then you get that out of your system because you can always bring it back and say, maybe I'll just start a bakery instead of going to Mars, right? But all of a sudden that's doable and that's exciting.
Right. And then you can see the action step forward from that.
Right.
I like that. I like adding that element of play in there to give yourself the creative imagination to really build it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love to tell the stories around it. Like, why is this important to you? How are you going to feel? How's it going to make people around you feel? What kind of impact are you going to have? And really just start to visualize that and put it on like a coat and just wear it and just sit with it. Say, is this what I really want? How long do I want to wear this? Okay, maybe I'll go back and start thinking again,
Right.
It's all about the exploration.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that, the playfulness of that. So where can the audience reach out to catch more of you and your goodness?
So my site is odinstrategies.com, and LinkedIn is my drug of choice as far as socials. Just to find me, Dan Woodruff there, and I'm post pretty regularly, just telling stories or insights and just sharing kind of my journey and trying to be as candid and open as possible. And if something lands and resonates, that's great. I just ultimately want to add value and make it okay to have these conversations and just say like, I messed up quite a few times. I was scared. I was uncomfortable, but I got here. You can too. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Dan.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Had a great conversation.
Hey, wait, before you go, do you want to increase your income by $1,000 a month? If so, check out our free side hustle guide at www.fourleaflifestyle.com/money ideas. I'll pop it in the show notes for easy access.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Manifestation and Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to continue your journey to financial empowerment and creating a life you love, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.
Come follow us on Instagram at Manifestation and Money Podcast or at 4Leaf Lifestyle for more inspiration and behind the scenes content. Remember, your life is yours to live. Your financial freedom journey is as unique as you are. So hop in the driver's seat. It's time to create the life of your dreams.